Oh, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Upstate Orange Podcast inside the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. It's Thursday, December 5th, 2013, and tonight we're going to be talking about Syracuse's convincing 69-52 victory over Indiana on Tuesday night in the Big Ten ACC Challenge, a look at the road ahead, and, of course, some great Syracuse basketball trivia. I'm Jim Sinacropi, along with my co-host, Matt Verke. Welcome back, Verk.
What's up, Jim?
And our resident college basketball guru via telephone in Cincinnati, Ohio, Brad Connor. Good evening, Brad.
Good evening, fellas.
The Upstate Orange Podcast is brought to you by Generations Bank with locations in Auburn, Geneva, Phelps, Seneca Falls, Union Springs, and Waterloo. Be sure to check out their mobile banking app or visit them online at mygenbank.com. In Seneca Meadows Landfill, responsible waste management for the next generation. Learn more online at senecameadows.com. And by our friends at Madej, Miris, and Ricky, your hometown personal injury attorneys. If you've been injured and deserve compensation, call the Finger Lakes Personal Injury Hotline at 315-568-0911. Or visit them online at madejmirisricky.com. Okay, Syracuse is now a perfect 8-0 with 4 impressive wins against quality big conference opponents. As a matter of fact, until North Carolina beat Michigan State last night, Syracuse was the only team in the country with 2 wins over ranked teams. So
really,
yeah, you wouldn't have thought it, but it's true. And of course, Syracuse didn't lose to Belmont and UAB, which is nice. So let's get right into it and talk about this with our big 5 questions. All right, guys, we went to Maui. We beat everybody. Indiana came to the Dome, and we destroyed them. Our defense looks better than ever. Tyler Ennis looks like a fifth-year senior, not a freshman. And we got talent everywhere. Trevor Cooney is the next Jerry McNamara. He's on pace to break McNamara's three-point records single season. And percentage, who's somebody's percentage record? 3-point percentage, Matt Rowe's percentage record, and Jerry McNamara's total threes in a season. He's on pace, Trevor Cooney. So, let me hear it. Are we the number 1 team in the country right now, Verk? Are we the best team in the country?
You know, when I thinking about that question, we could be. You know, they have every right to be ranked number 1. Do I think we're the best team in the country? I think we're one of a handful of, 7 or 8 teams that could win the national championship, which I think at this point in the season is where you want to be. I'm not too worried about the ranking right now. And could they be ranked number 1? Sure, they got the resume for it. But I think they've proved that they're going to be there, and they're going to have a great season. And they're one of maybe 10, 12 teams who can win 6 games come March and take home the title.
And the great thing about where the program is right now is that we've been there since Routins and Onuaku's senior year.
Yeah, we had those last year. Obviously, made the Final Four run. Then the years before there, we had Fat Mello couldn't play, and then Onuaku got hurt, and those are great Syracuse teams that really a couple things go right for them. They're Final Four teams also, and and it's true. We haven't had this kind of talent and this good at teams for this long in a while.
Year after year after year.
We're gonna get into more about the players and stuff like that. But yeah, they're right there in the top 3 or 4 teams in the country.
And like I say, just to be there at that level consistently is very difficult. I don't know if there's any other schools that have done it over the same stretch as much as Syracuse in terms of being top 5. And we had questions about them this year. We thought they might be overrated at 7 or 8, and but they've proven us wrong. But Brad, I got to ask you: are we the best team in the country? Not only are we going to be number 1 when the polls come out on Monday, but are we truly the best team in the country?
Jim, I hate to burst your bubble, but no, this team is not the best team in the country. They've you said it beat 2 ranked teams. I only counted 1.
They beat
Baylor.
Baylor is the only ranked team I can recall.
Who else?
Indiana's a decent team. They're not ranked. Cal, Minnesota, they weren't ranked.
Minnesota was ranked.
Weren't
they?
Hard to compare those wins with Arizona beating Duke in Madison Square Garden, frankly, and that's it's hard to compare that with Michigan State beating Kentucky, even though they did lose to North Carolina
at home.
I don't think they've been tested enough yet, frankly. They haven't played a top 10 team, and they haven't beaten a top 10 team. You do that, you've proven yourself. They haven't done that yet.
When they do, though, they're going to shut them down. They're going to struggle. They're such a bad matchup. The reason they're the best team in the country isn't necessarily all the talent. We have the right pieces in place for our system, and our system, when run the way that it's been run in recent history, has proven to be make us the best team in the country. Because of Boeheim's system.
I agree with both you guys. They have the pieces to do it. I just need to see it. I need to see it stacked up against a team that has superior athletes. We've not seen that yet. Against Duke, I think they have superior athletes, and we'll see how Syracuse stacks up and how they're able to match up with a team like that. North Carolina, I think if they've got all their guys back, they have superior athletes. We'll see how Syracuse's defense fares against teams like that. I'm eager to see it.
You don't think Indiana had superior athletes as well? I mean, they're
but they're freshmen. They're young, and I mean, they're not ranked. And they're not ranked for a reason. They're. I don't think all. I mean,
they're like 26.
Tyler Ennis is a better athlete than Yogi Ferrell. Noah Vonleh is a great athlete, and I think he's going to be an outstanding player. But I think beyond that, Will Shee's not a better athlete than anybody on Syracuse's team.
Yeah, I do understand they haven't played the top tier talent in terms of like top 5 talent. They haven't had a matchup, but to consistently win over 4 big time programs is impressive this time of year. To go out to Maui and the thing is that we win these games. It's pretty much predestined by the middle of the second half that we're going to pull this game out. Even though some teams have hung around, we haven't really been challenged down the stretch of a game yet by one of the big teams. Of course, St. Francis, Brooklyn did, but of course, we won that game. Where a lot of these other programs aren't winning these games. Every team in the ACC has a loss, except for Pittsburgh and Syracuse, I think, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, every single one.
Duke's got some tough losses. Obviously, their 2 losses are to Arizona and. Who else beat them? Kansas.
Michigan State.
Kansas.
Oh, yeah, Kansas. Yeah, and of course, in some squeaky victories against East Carolina and questionable victory against Vermont. I don't know. This isn't a great Duke. I mean, it's not one of Duke's great teams. No,
they're good.
There's no great teams anymore. There's no great
but
college basketball teams anymore, and that includes Kansas and Arizona and Michigan State. It just doesn't happen anymore. So I think that is another reason why I think we're much better than we had anticipated, just because of our system and our experience.
That's what's going to make this year great. There's 10 teams that can really have a legitimate claim to that number one ranking, or probably 12 teams that can legitimately claim a number 1 seed at this point in time to say, hey, we've got a shot at that.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. I think it's pretty wide open this year, and it's gonna be a fun year.
Well, let's move on to question 2, and that's Boeheim's rotation. It looks like we're set, playing these tough early games, where we've been challenged into the second half, and Boeheim tightens it right up. We haven't seen B.J. Johnson. We haven't seen Patterson. We haven't seen Roberson. We've seen 7 or 8 guys. Sometimes Boeheim throws in at 9th, but I think we'll see a little bit more of these guys maybe against Binghamton and High Point, but we're getting closer to the conference season, and I think the rotation's set right now. What do you think, Virk?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like you're going to see the starting lineup, which is with Coleman and Christmas. Then, 4 or 5 minutes of the game, he's going to take one of them out, and Grant's going to come in, who's really, let's face it, he's basically a starter. And then you're going to see Keita play a little bit. You're going to see Coleman get spot minutes from there, and you're going to see Benajay, it looks like, and that's about it. There's not really. I don't see, Syracuse plays that zone, and I think it allows them to. It's an active zone, but you can rest a little bit. You're hopefully not going to see a lot of foul trouble. But the freshmen, I don't think, showed enough early on in some of those games where they were beating people pretty good.
Right.
None of them stood out necessarily. I mean, obviously outside of Tyler Ennis.
Yeah.
But the freshmen didn't earn any minutes in my mind. And I don't think really Benajay's earned too many minutes. He's a solid player. He gets in there. He's going to rest Cooney and Ennis here and there, and then they're going to rotate the big guys in. C.J. Fair's going to play 37 minutes a game, and Jeremy Grant's going to play 32. And
the other thing working against those young guys, too, with Benajay is that when C.J. was in foul trouble, we just moved Benajay to forward. So, we didn't have to bring in Roberson or Johnson. So with the three big guys and C.J. and Jeremy and the fact that Benajay swings, there really isn't much room for any of those guys, even if there is a little foul trouble. Brad, what do you think about the rotation? Is anything going to change between now and when we open the season ACC schedule against Miami in January?
I think the freshmen have to be able to demonstrate something in the Binghamton game, in the High Point game, Eastern Michigan, maybe even Miami, to be able to indicate to Boeheim that they're ready for a more prominent role. So they probably have 3 games between now and ACC season to be able to show something. They obviously weren't given that chance in Maui and against Indiana. If they can't, then I don't see any real role for them. And it's unfortunate, but you've got a solid 8, and we've seen that in past years too. I mean, Carter Williams didn't break this lineup for much more than 10 minutes a night come Big East season, and I unfortunately for a guy like Patterson and Patterson especially, there's no room for him in this backcourt, and Johnson and Roberson, I think they've got C.J. Fair who's going to play 38 minutes. Where do you put a guy like that? You want to give Jeremy Grant 25, 30 minutes a night? That locks up both front court spots really, and you got your rotating centers. There's just not a lot of spots for these guys to play.
So that brings me to kind of an addendum on question 2. You think any of these guys are going to become a little disgruntled? Usually we have transfers. There hasn't been too many in recent years, but traditionally of every class, 1 or 2 guys transfers or doesn't make it through. Any prime candidates you feel that might get disgruntled? What do you think, Brad?
Yeah, I would worry about Patterson. He's kind of a vagabond a little bit. He was multiple high schools, and he had committed to Indiana, and that something fell through there. And he's a guy that's bounced around a little bit in his short career. And yeah, I could potentially see that, especially as young as this backcourt is. I mean, Tyler Ennis is not a guy who's going to go pro after his freshman year, so he's going to be around at least another year. You have Benajay, who's a sophomore. You have Cooney, who's a sophomore. It could be tough for him to crack this lineup next year and maybe even the year after.
And they're bringing in another great guard,
Caleb Joseph.
Yeah, so it's only going to be tougher.
Yep.
Yeah,
he's a guy I could see in jeopardy.
Yeah, I think the one thing we got going for him is that there's a lot of examples right there in front of these young guys, like Trevor Cooney. He redshirted, he struggled his freshman year and didn't see significant minutes, but he worked hard, and now he's playing. And even a guy like C.J. Fair, he played as a freshman, but, wasn't an impact player. And every year he's kind of, gotten a little more prominent role. And Coleman's another example, too. He didn't play at all last year and had some injury troubles, but now he's starting to play a role. So, and the good coaching, between McNamara, Hopkins, Autry, staying in these guys' ears and letting them know, to keep working hard. I'm thinking those days of transfers are over, and I also think that the kind of guys that Boeheim's bringing in now, I think he pays attention to the personality or the approach, and tries to stay away from guys that might potentially not be willing to work hard for a year to earn their spot. So. Well, how about question 3? Every show we've talked about the big guys, the 3-headed monster at center, Christmas, Keita, and Coleman. Are they improving? Are they getting better? What do you think?
No. I mean, they look pretty similar to last year in my mind. It's not like they're terrible or anything, but they're decent players. They're not giving them any scoring. I think Keita, I think they're all playing about what how I thought they would. Coleman's been able to score here and there, but nothing consistent. He didn't really do anything in the Indiana game. So they're fine. I just don't see. I haven't seen drastic improvement from any of them.
How about you, Brad? Anything stick out with these guys showing any improvement? Now, Keita's a senior. Christmas is a junior. how much improvement can we see out of a senior like Kita? But what do you think as a whole? Anybody improving? We getting better at the 5?
No, I mean I agree with Verk 100%. You've got what you're going to get with these guys. I don't think anything we see kind of surprises us. Compared to last year, I think Christmas is somewhat improved. His skill level, his maturity, I think, are a little bit improved. Kita, I think, frankly, has regressed a little bit. He was such an anchor in that defense and was a lockdown free throw shooter, if you recall, for long stretches. And we haven't seen that this year. He's gone back to a little bit more of the stone hands that he had as a sophomore, and I'm a little bit concerned that continues. Coleman is who he is. We would like to have seen improvement. I just think it's status quo with him. So they are who they are at this point, really. We just hope we can get, an average of 10 points, 8 rebounds out of the 3 of them combined every night. And I think if that's the case, then they'll do pretty well with all the other weapons they've got.
Yeah, I think part of it, too, is Boeheim doesn't ask his centers to score. He asks them to do other things. They don't rely on those guys. Now, when you do get a 5 like Onuaku who can score, then you get your team just turns into a more potent offensive team.
Yeah, it seems like they'll come out, maybe out of first couple of possessions and try to throw it into the centers once in a while, but then it's pretty much forgotten about. And sometimes I laugh, especially being at the game the other night. I see Christmas working harder there, and they don't even really look to throw it to him. So,
yeah. But I will disagree.
I thought that's funny. I thought that same thing. He does jockey for position, and they don't really run anything through him.
No. But I'm going to disagree with you guys. I do see some improvement. I see some improvement in the overall play of Christmas. He really has an impact on the defensive end of the court when he's in there. Solid rebounding. And, he finishes when he has to, maybe on an offensive putback or
yeah, he's been doing that for years, though. You're asking for great improvement, and I haven't seen, I think Kita made great improvement last year. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And he seems like the same player he was last year, which was good. You know what I mean?
He's bumbling rebounds now, though, which makes me crazy. Defensive rebounds, it looks like he should easily grab it, and he just can't corral it. Coleman, I thought against Indiana in the 14 minutes he played, he was pretty good. He had I think he had 2 really nice low post moves, and then one where he put a nice move on and then missed the.
He had. I remember one good move, then he had one terrible one.
Yeah, but conditioning with him so he can stay on the court. But I agree with what you said about if they can get 10 points and 8 rebounds between, the whole 3 of them, then that's fine. And I think that they're there. I think as a whole, and I think that one of those 3 guys will eventually have a bigger game, and that'll just be a bonus. So, question number 4. I don't know if you guys noticed this week, but Mike Hopkins signed with IMG agency. So he hired an agent. Usually you do that when you want to explore the job market. Now, there's 2 sides of this. The one side is, Hopkins is leaving. That's terrible. But the other side is that must mean that, Boeheim has no timetable set, for his retirement, and I think that's a good thing. How long, Verk, you think Boeheim's going to coach?
I thought about this for a while, and I don't know. I mean, who
knows? Who knows? 10 years?
Why would he stop, I guess, is the question.
Yeah.
He seems happy. He's getting great players. He's got a good system now. He doesn't have to go out. He's got, as long as Hopkins and those guys are there, they do all. He kind of is the deal closer. He goes in and and he's Jim Boeheim. He's got one of the greatest jobs going.
Dan Dakich called him the coolest guy in college basketball during the telecast.
But
and I think you might be right.
I think he's got at least another 4 years in him. I mean,
yeah.
They're going to be really good. They're getting good recruits coming in again next year. I think he wins another national championship. I think he retires, but I think he wants,
More.
he wants
new challenge.
Yeah,
ACC.
He's just coming off the Final Four. He wants to lead them into the ACC, and I think he wants to go and dominate the ACC for a few years, and then I guess how long can Mike Hopkins sit around though is the question. He's happy. Yeah. His kids all Hopkins.
They love
he's
Syracuse.
Got a bunch of kids. They all go to they're huge Syracuse fans. So for him to leave. It's a big decision. They're obviously compensating them pretty well, I'm sure. So, I hope Mike does stay around, and ends up being Boeheim's replacement.
I think even if he takes another job, that hopefully he'd come back. Now, Brad, number one, how long will Boeheim coach in your estimation? And number two, if we do lose Hopkins, how much does that hurt the program?
My opinion on this is that Boeheim will coach as long as it takes for Jerry McNamara to be ready to replace him.
Instead of Hopkins?
The reality is they'll probably lose Hopkins. Hopkins kind of got jobbed out of the USC position last year. I thought that was his for the taking, and then this guy from Florida Gulf Coast comes out of nowhere and gets it for whatever reason. And
terrible hire, I think.
One good week gets you, makes you a credible candidate. Whatever.
Yeah.
Hopkins has had other opportunities. I think he'll continue to get more as this the program continues to be on top of the college basketball world. And so I would say Hopkins is gone within 2 years, and Boeheim will not. I see him there longer than 2 years, and frankly, who's the heir apparent? I don't think it would be Red Autry as much as I think Jerry McNamara. I think he's just the face of the program, and he has been for a long time.
But boy, he's an untested coach. I mean, he is not. If that was to happen next year, I would not feel comfortable with Jerry McNamara taking the reins.
No, I would say the number I have in my head is about 5 years. In 5 years from now, McNamara will be on the staff for 8-9 years. I could foresee that.
That's interesting, because I always thought, even if Hopkins goes somewhere when that job opens up, which I think might be hurting Hopkins' chances, because everybody thinks, we'll bring Hopkins in to build a program here, and he'll just jump back to Syracuse the minute Boeheim retires, which could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So, who knows? I don't want Boeheim to retire. Sometimes the thought of a different head coach is intriguing, but like Dan Dakich said, Boeheim's the coolest guy in college basketball right now, and he is working that system to a T, and loving every minute of it. Don't want to see it end. And there's also the all-time winningest coach dangling in front of him. It's between him and Krzyzewski. Krzyzewski's just a couple years younger, but Boeheim can outlast him. And I don't know, just knowing Boeheim, the kid from Lions who kind of worked his way up, always the underdog, and built this great program at Syracuse, he's a competitor, and he'll never say it, but I think that all-time wins mark is something that he thinks about and thinks that he can end up, taking. All-time winningest coach in the history of college basketball, Jim Boeheim.
Yeah, I don't, he's not going to catch Krzyzewski unless Krzyzewski retires, obviously.
Probably not, right.
So, those two.
I think 1,000 wins might be a nice milestone for him. Maybe he's got that in the back of his head.
Yeah. But, he would probably have to go, about 2 full seasons after K retires to take it. And who knows?
And K's younger.
Yeah, he is younger, but, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Question 5. 2 big tests before we begin our ACC schedule. St. John's and MSG, and then Villanova, who beat Kansas in the Dome. No disrespect to High Point or Binghamton there. Will we be undefeated on January 4th when we open up our ACC schedule, when Miami comes to the Dome for our first official ACC conference game? Brad, what do you think?
I say yes, but only because of the fact that Villanova game is in the Dome. If that game was in Philly, I think that they would probably have a loss in that game, because the way Villanova's playing right now, I think Villanova's playing as well as Syracuse, frankly.
And, of course, Jay Wright knows how to scheme against Syracuse, which doesn't help.
Right. But since it's in the Dome, and I think there'll be a nice crowd for that game, I think they'll get past that game. St. John's they're not very good, and the Garden's practically a second home for Syracuse, so I wouldn't worry about that game as much. And the others that we've talked about, Binghamton, High Point, no worries. I think they'll be undefeated going into Big East or ACC play.
Yeah, Eastern Michigan as well as the other game. There's 5 games before to close out 2013 and before we start the ACC. You see us losing any of those 5 games, Burke?
I don't. I obviously Villanova sticks out. Ranked 15th in the country now, or 14th, wherever they're at. But they've had our number before, but I just see this team. I see us beating them and going undefeated into ACC play.
Well, as I mentioned, the upcoming schedule: Saturday night, Binghamton, 7 o'clock. ESPN 3. Hook up your laptops. Got to tell you guys too. Chromecast, Google Chromecast, is a nice device, and I think I got one coming for Verk, actually.
Sweet.
Off of Amazon for Christmas.
Right.
But you plug that into your HDMI port, you stream it from your phone or laptop to your TV. That's an easy way to do it. I got the Watch ESPN app on my phone. I don't mind when they're on ESPN 3 at all, really. Like, at the beginning of the season, I didn't like that, but I swear I got it under control.
But you have to have a Time Warner subscription, right?
You have to
Yes.
have a subscription to a carrier that carries ESPN. Yeah.
Right.
So if you're on DirecTV.
Right, but I don't think I can get it.
Oh, I bet you could. I think
I have
what
to
you
look
do
it
is you load the ESPN app, and it'll ask you to choose your provider.
Okay. I'll try it.
And if DirecTV's on that list.
Not your TV. Your internet service provider, not your TV. So for me, it's Cincinnati Bell, even though I have DirecTV.
Right.
No.
I have Verizon Internet, I think.
Are you are you sure you're not picking your cable television provider? Because they need to check to make sure.
I picked my internet service provider, so it's Cincinnati Bell.
Well, yeah, since both of mine are Time Warner Cable, I guess maybe I didn't notice that, but I assumed it was they want to make sure you subscribe to the cable package that gets ESPN.
I'll give you an update once I try it. So.
All right, well, hey, stay tuned. Hey, another quick note: Syracuse, or actually, I was going to run down the schedule here. Sunday, December 15th at noon, St. John's at MSG. That game's on Fox Sports. Friday, December 20th, 7 o'clock against High Point. That's on ESPN 3, internet-only game. December 28th is the big one against Villanova. 2 o'clock p.m. on Saturday afternoon on CBS. Gotta love CBS on Saturday afternoons in the winter. Then Tuesday, New Year's Eve, 3 o'clock game against Eastern Michigan at the Dome. That's on ESPNU.
Tell you what, every game has been on TV for the last 10 years until this year. That's what really sucks about moving the ACC in my mind.
Yeah, the world is changing.
One more freaking thing not to like it.
Yeah, hey, I'm with you there. But I'm comfortable. I've acclimated to it, and I'm ready for the internet games now. So this morning, Thursday morning at 9 a.m., more tickets were released for the Duke game and for the UNC game and a lot of other games. Well, the Duke game already sold out. I actually logged on about 10 after 9, and I didn't like any of the seats for the Duke game, and then shortly after that, they were gone. Some decent seats for UNC, but I got other ways to get tickets.
Yeah, and they're expensive. I mean, I
Yeah.
know. Last year I went to Georgetown and paid quite a bit of money for them, and
That game
it was horrible.
wasn't a good value for
I
you.
vowed never to pay for another ticket to a Syracuse game after that. So
Yeah, and I guess 1,000 lower tier tickets are still available for that Villanova game on December 28th. So, and then another final note, I don't know if you guys knew it, but that Indiana game, Malachi Richardson, one of the top recruits in the nation, was in the Dome visiting Syracuse, and what a great game for him to visit. And furthermore, any recruit in the country who watched that telecast against Indiana, that was basically an infomercial for Syracuse University. Tirico and Dakich just talked about how great the atmosphere was, how awesome Jim Boeheim was, and then the Qs just rolled, and the crowd was into it. It was an electric atmosphere. So,
It was great, except for Dakich pissing everybody off, talking about 87 and missed free throws.
Yeah, that's all right, because it's true. It's true. I'm starting to like Dan Dakich.
You don't have to judge it back up. Tirico was getting pissed.
Yeah. Well, hey, we'll be right back with some Connor's Corner trivia, some great Syracuse trivia, our list of the week, and our national power rankings and bold predictions, and we'll pick a couple topics for the road, and right after we hear from our sponsors.
We hold on to the things that really matter. Welcome to Generations Bank.
Hi, I'm Alan Larson. At Seneca Meadows, landfill gas is used as fuel to generate electricity to power between 12,000 and 18,000 homes. And because this fuel is burned at high temperature, it doesn't go into the atmosphere. To learn more, watch our videos at SenecaMeadows.com.
And welcome back to the Upstate Orange podcast on FingerLakes1.tv. We're live every Thursday night at 10 p.m. Eastern on FingerLakes1.tv and YouTube. You can watch us on your smartphone. You can subscribe to FingerLakes1.com on YouTube to make sure that you don't miss us. We're also on iTunes, Stitcher.com, and everywhere great podcasts are hosted on the internet. And including, you can find us in noonsmagician.com every week, too. Each new episode's posted there. The best Syracuse blog, the authoritative Syracuse blog, Sean Keeley's News Magician. We got to get Sean on this show one of these upcoming weeks, without a doubt. So, Brad, trivia time. What do you got for us this week?
I thought a lot about the various challenges that Syracuse has played in over the years, given their incarnation in the ACC Big Ten Challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys tell me what Syracuse's record is in conference challenge games in their illustrious history?
I'm going to say 7-2.
Oh, boy. What, I mean, they had the Big East ACC Challenge for a while, right?
Yep, that was the best.
And but we never played Duke, huh?
We may have once, but I'm not sure about if we ever played him in that. I think we did play him once in that. Played him once in the NCAA tournament.
I'll go with 6-4.
You guys brush up on your history. Syracuse is 7-0 in challenge play.
Wow. Well, I got the win column right.
So in the Big East ACC Challenge, going back, it was only played 3 years, guys. That's the crazy thing. We remember it like it was this legendary deal, and at the time, I kind of think it was.
You know, because ACC stopped because we kept killing them. Big East kept killing the ACC, so they cut it off.
It's funny they did, but so I was trying to remember it, and I pulled up a couple of articles that talked about it, and one was like from the Baltimore Sun back in '91, right when they pulled it, or they were just getting ready to play the last edition of it, and they blamed John Thompson as the guy who ended that challenge.
Really?
One that didn't want to play. He never liked it from the beginning. Boeheim was against it from the start, but he warmed to it, I think. Obviously, the success they had helped. But John Thompson never liked it and got blamed for being the one that yanked it. So it wasn't ACC. ACC said, we want to keep doing it. And the Big East said, no, I'm sorry, we can't get it in the schedule. It's not going to work. The Big East added a bunch of teams. They added Miami and Boston College, or Miami and Virginia Tech and Rutgers, I guess. And so they ended up with an 18-game conference schedule, and they just couldn't fit it in for TV. So the Big East finally said, no, we can't do it. But Thompson was the guy that was really pushing the charge to get rid of it.
Yeah, well, interesting. I always assumed it was because we beat the ACC so bad that they just didn't want to. Because we did, I think, win every single one of those challenges, the conference. I assume, Brad, that the next follow-up question is going to be who do we beat or something similar. Or do you have that info?
I have it all right here. Yeah, so you guys are talking about playing Duke. That was correct. The first year that Syracuse played, they did play against Duke. And when they played that game, Syracuse was number one in the country that year. It was 1989, so Derek Coleman's senior year. And
Wow.
they beat Duke 78-76. Do you guys remember who they played in the other two games?
In the ACC Challenge. Let me channel my past here. For some reason, I want to say Maryland. I'm going to say Maryland, and I'm going to say NC State.
I don't remember at all.
Jim, you're right on one. NC State, they played in 90. They beat them 86-79. And that year, so the first year, Syracuse was number one. They played Duke number 6, and Syracuse won. Second year, Syracuse was number 4 when they played it. That was 1990-91, Billy Owens last year. And they played against NC State, who was 10th that year. So they had some great matchups.
Yeah.
And Syracuse won both of them. Third year, they played Florida State for God's sake.
Oh, that's what I was
going to
say.
Those teams
Yeah.
up. And the irony was they were both unranked. I don't know. Syracuse, after they lost Billy Owens, and they didn't think the Dave Johnson team was going to do very much, and they were unranked. And so, but Syracuse won handily by almost 20.
Very nice. And then we moved on to the SEC Challenge, right?
The SEC Challenge only went 3 years. Well, no, I'm sorry. Syracuse only played in it 3 years. So the first couple of years, they picked 4 random games, 4 random SEC and Big East teams. And Syracuse wasn't in it for the first 2 or 3 years. And then they expanded the field, and Syracuse got in. Do you remember who they played in the 3 years? They weren't even consecutive. It was 2009 and then 11 and 12.
I want to say Florida, but I don't think... yeah, Florida twice in Arkansas is what I'm going to say.
That sounds about right.
You said Florida twice and then Arkansas?
Yeah.
That is correct. Yep, they beat Florida twice. 2009, Syracuse was ranked 6th. They beat Florida, who was ranked 11th, won by 12. 11, Syracuse was ranked 3rd, beat Florida, who was ranked 9th, won by 4. And then last year's Arkansas game, which we all remember, is Sutherland's breakout game, when Syracuse was ranked 9th and Arkansas wasn't even ranked.
So we should bet the house on Syracuse in next year's ACC Big Ten Challenge, huh?
They never lose.
They never lose.
Now, funny thing, we talk about getting games on the internet. One of those Florida games, or maybe it wasn't even SEC, but we played Florida quite a bit there. Eight or so years ago. I know it was 8 years ago because I remember being in the hospital when my wife was in labor, having to spend the night, and Syracuse was playing Florida, and it wasn't on one of the like the hospital TVs didn't have ESPN2 or ESPNU or something. And so I remember listening to that game on the radio and didn't even get very good radio reception. So, at least now we can watch them on the internet. At least some of us can with the proper credentials. So that pretty good trivia there, Brad. I was actually surprised that I recalled some of those.
Yeah, as I look back, I remembered most of the games. And, they're all early season games, so, there's a lot of time has passed in some of those games. It's hard to remember the details, but yeah, I remember a lot of those. It was, it's great success. Syracuse undefeated in the history of Maui, undefeated in the history of challenge games. Good stuff rolling off of this.
We got to get hook Duke and Syracuse up out in Maui because Duke's 15-0 out in Maui.
I don't think that'll ever happen because we're now conference mates.
Probably not.
But Bam said he's never going back, except to play golf.
Well, we'll see when in 8 years from now when they ask him back and he's still coaching. Great trivia, Brad. Let's move it on to the list of the week. I really enjoyed the list of the week last year, Brad. I don't know if you listened to the show. Verk stayed home. It was a Thanksgiving night special. He ate too much pie and had to call in and miss. But we basically gave Christmas presents from former Orangemen to current Orangemen, and that was fun, Brad. That was a fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
That was a fun one.
I spent a lot of time on Thanksgiving Day thinking about that very topic.
And so, if you want to go back and listen to last week's show, if you missed it, that's a timeless topic. It didn't lose its relevance in the past week, but this week for our list of the week, started thinking about there's a lot of talk about how we're going to play Georgetown again, and this home and home with St. John's and Nova. There's only so many you can fit in. So as a fan, as a longtime Syracuse fan and a huge Big East fan, I wanted to rank my preference of 1 through 5 of who I'd like to see in these out-of-conference matchups, early season matchups. Or it doesn't even have to be early season. I'd like to see him play that Georgetown game in February, kind of like Louisville and Memphis used to do. It's done in recent history. But I'll give you my top 5, and then I want to hear what you guys think. Number 1, I'll go from 5 to 1. I thought about St. Bonaventure. I think that would be a cool one, but they didn't make my top 5. I thought about Seton Hall, and I thought about Indiana just because we beat them every time, so why not play them? But who I put at 5 was Providence. I don't know why, but that's one school I'm going to miss. Their original Big East member. I liked playing. The Providence fans were knowledgeable. The Big East League offices were there. I always like
The
playing
Final
the
Four in
Friars.
87.
Yeah, they got that Final Four matchup in '87. I like that match up against Providence. I got them 5. I put Nova at 4. I put St. John's at 3 only because that means we get to go to Madison Square Garden. That's the only reason I put them ahead of Nova. And Nova tends to beat us a lot more than St. John's, but also because St. John's is probably historically almost as big a rival as Georgetown if you go back to the 80s. As a matter of fact, in the early 80s, we used to beat Georgetown when they had Ewing and some of those teams, but we hardly ever beat Mullen and Barry, in St. John's, including some heartbreakers, the Big East Finals with Barry Black Pearl. Obviously the program's not what it used to be at St. John's when Louis Carnesecca was there, but I still like to see that matchup, and I'm looking forward to it this year. I got UConn at number 2. I hate UConn. I don't even feel sorry for them that they're left kind of out in the cold now in the American Athletic Conference with Louisville leaving next year and Rutgers leaving. But I would like to see that because that is a genuine rivalry. 6 overtime game, Calhoun and Boeheim. Not Calhoun anymore, but obviously they built that kind of rivalry. I'd like to see us play the Huskies, if only not for another chance to beat them every year. And then, of course, number 1, Georgetown. I can't believe we're not playing Georgetown this year. I can't believe it. It doesn't even seem possible. But which one of you guys want to go first with your list?
Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, I'll work in reverse order. Number 1, I would agree with Georgetown. They're the primary rivals and probably always will be, even if they're not conference foes. There's just too much history there. Number 2, I'd agree with UConn. It's, you just love to beat UConn, and there's always going to be an animosity there. Even despite the fact Calhoun's not there anymore, I think that'll still be somebody we'd relish beating every chance we get. Number 3, at least this year, I would go with Louisville. Unfortunately, that'll change next year, obviously, when Louisville comes into the ACC, but that's become a great rivalry over the last, 5, 6, 7 years, and I missed that one this year. That's a great game to watch. They've played them tough.
Yeah, the whole ACC
down
thing.
there in a dome. I mean, every time they play, it's a bloodbath, and Patine.
Remember last year when we played them at Louisville, we weren't supposed to beat. We had such bad success playing at Louisville, and we ended up beating them thanks to Michael Carter-Williams. I agree that it's a great rivalry, and the ACC transition will not be complete and feel acceptable to me until next year when Louisville is in there with us. It'll be a whole different ball game. So yeah, that's a good one, Brad.
I would say next is Villanova. I used to love those Syracuse-Villanova games, and they've always given Syracuse a battle. It's going to be tough to not have that one as a home and home anymore, and I'll miss that one. Number 5, selfishly, I say Cincinnati because I could go to the games and they're right here in town.
Yeah, what a major change.
Nobody else is going to say Cincinnati, but for me, that was a big one. When I moved to Cincinnati, it was exciting because this was a Big East city, and it's not anymore, and I miss that. But on the outside looking in, I also thought I would like to play Kentucky. Frankly, they beat Syracuse in '96 in the finals, and they played that one stupid game where Syracuse wore blue uniforms down there.
They beat us in the Alaska Shootout Finals too in the late '80s. The Great Alaska Shootout Finals, we lost. I really I have a lot of knowledge of these challenges and conference tournaments for Syracuse, but you're right, Brad. Kentucky's beaten us, I think, 3 times. Have we beaten them since '96? Have we played them? When they wore the blue uniforms, Coleman was on the team.
Yep.
And like I say, Alaska Anchorage, and then we played them in '96. I don't know if we've played them since then.
I honestly don't even know.
I'm going to say no. You don't even have to look that up because I'm almost 100% sure on that one. But that's
I'm working on it now. I'll let you know if they have. But yeah, that's a game I would like to see, but it's not one I think we'll ever see anytime soon.
Yeah. How about you, Burke? Who's your list?
I thought about this for a while, and I like what Brad said. I'll start at number 5 and go down, but with like a Kentucky matchup, just especially lately, they're always they got these great recruiting classes. I just think it'd be a fun atmosphere, a fun team to play year in and year out. I like to match the Louisville thing too, but with them coming into the ACC next year, it's they're going to play as it is.
Yep.
So then I kind of followed with what you guys had with Nova, St. John's, UConn, Georgetown. Just those rivalries are games we would look forward to every year. A lot of history. I agree with what you said about just playing in the Garden against St. John's. We typically have pretty much owned them lately, and like you said, Villanova has. Kind of, Jay Wright, if anybody had Boeheim's number, it was kind of him there for a little bit. And just great rivalries. Then you go to UConn, Georgetown, just a lot of bad
brainers,
blood.
right?
And, a lot of history, like you said. And, those games will be missed. And, hopefully they can get them on the schedule. And, obviously can't play all 5 of those teams every year, but, play a couple of them every year at least.
Yeah, we need to bolster our schedule strength moving into the ACC because it's just such fucking... It's just bad.
Well, yeah, and we talked. As Syracuse number 1 team, it'd be nice if Syracuse played Kentucky this year already. And then we can say, hey, they or play. The kids want to go. If you play those teams, the kids, I think it's better for recruiting and go out and play Michigan State or Kentucky and teams like that.
Well, all right, speaking about teams like that, it's time for our power rankings. This is where we just quickly give our top 5 teams in the country as we see them. And I'm going to go first because I got a little bit of a surprise. But you know what? Villanova's 14th in the AP poll this week. They're number 5 in my poll. They beat Kansas. They're undefeated. All these other teams have losses. Darren Hilliard, Javon Pinkston, James Bell, they're a really good team, and it's unfortunate that when we do, hopefully they'll rise further in the rankings, so when we do play them at the end of the month, it's a top 10 matchup, at least, maybe a top 5 matchup, because they're 5 in my power rankings, Villanova. I got Arizona 4. Obviously the win over Duke was nice, but it seems like that was Duke's second loss, but they're undefeated and looking good. 3, Oklahoma State. Marcus Smart is unbelievable, and that's not all the firepower they have. And then I got Kansas at 2 because I really like that team, even though they did lose to Villanova. They're young. They got some really big guys, young guys, athletic guys. I'm still impressed with them. And number 1, it's got to be the Cuse. We're undefeated. We haven't lost yet, and we've looked pretty convincing the whole way. All systems go. We're number 1, and they may be number 1 in my power rankings until April, when they're number 1 in the country after winning the national championship.
Wichita State hasn't lost either.
Yeah, but they don't have CJ Fair. Is Wichita State in your top 5, Verk?
No.
Who is?
I got Wisconsin at number 5, 8-0, and they've really been. I just kicked the camera. They've really been beating up on people. And number 4, I got Kentucky. I just think, they're talented. I think they're just going to continue to get better and better. 3, Michigan State. I know they lost at home to North Carolina. It's really that Carolina one's a big win for Carolina without Hairston and some of those guys.
Michigan State was horrible at the beginning of that game.
And they were banged up. They had some guys who got a little injured during that game, but I still think they got the talent, and they still got some nice wins this year. Number 2, I got the Orange.
Okay.
And number 1, Arizona. I just watching Arizona play the other night. They got a lot of good players. Everybody talked about Gordon coming as a freshman, but I think that Johnson's their 2 guard. They got a steady point guard. A lot of athletes. They're big. They're deep, and I think they're going to be a handful this year.
How about you, Brad?
Pretty similar. Number 5, I actually put Kansas in, even though I wasn't very impressed with what they did in the Bahamas. I still think that there's a lot of talent on that team, and couldn't take them out of my 5. Number 4, Michigan State, dropped them down from 1 after losing a very uninspired game against Carolina. 3, I have Syracuse, bump them up a spot based on the Indiana win. Can't get them above 3 yet, though. Number 2, I have Kentucky. And number 1, Arizona, for the same reason Verk said. They're looking fantastic. They've got size. They've got great guard play. McConnell's a great point guard. Great addition for them. And I think they're going to be one. I think the Pac-10 is right for the taking for them. They're going to have a pretty good season all around, I think.
A little disparity there in our power rankings, but let me ask you guys this. If you take them isolated teams, I can see why maybe, but I really think that if you match up Syracuse against any of these teams, that they're going to lose to us. And not just because I love Syracuse, we all love Syracuse, but because of what we've done to teams that, like Indiana last year in the NCAA tournament, they were number 1 seed, one of the top teams in the country all year, and we crushed them. And
we didn't crush St. Francis, though.
I know, but that's just kind of the way it works, in terms of playing to your opponent. But all these teams with all these weapons, when they come in, they have to change what they do to face Syracuse. Syracuse never has to change what we do to handle another team. Small tweaks, I'm sure, and maybe some different things you're trying out offensively, but for the most part, we come out and do our thing, and other teams adjust to us. And whether you're trying to practice against a 2-3 zone, I mean, nobody sees anything like our zone. And so I think we'd beat any of those teams if we played them head-to-head. Do you believe that, Brad? Do you think that we would beat Arizona if we played them head-to-head, even though you got Arizona 1, Syracuse 3?
On a neutral court, no.
Huh. Well.
Otherwise, I'd have put Syracuse number 1.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm not sure what we're basing this off because, I think,
Arizona's proven more to me so far.
Okay,
I haven't seen Syracuse beat a team with the talent of Duke yet. If and when they do, then we'll have a basis for comparison.
All right. Well, it should be interesting in upcoming episodes then, because we will. And actually, would you consider Villanova game in the Dome a challenge that would convince you that Syracuse is better than Arizona?
It'll be their best win of the year, no doubt. Arizona, Villanova's not Duke, I don't think. So
Duke's got 2 losses, though.
I don't know. They don't have Jabari Parker.
No, that's true. So far, Jabari Parker has led them to their worst November and early season start in recent memory. So,
don't play defense. That's part of the problem.
Do you think Syracuse would beat Arizona, Verk, if they played them head up, or Kentucky? You're high in Kentucky?
They could. I don't know. It's time will tell, I guess. Right now, if I had to pick, I'd pick Kentucky to beat Syracuse on a neutral court.
Jeez. I think we take them all, like I say, just because they got to adjust to us. But, we could sit here and debate that all day. But it's time for our bold predictions. And this is where we make a bold prediction. And I'm tracking them. Verk, again, I don't know if you saw last week, but I predicted that we would beat Indiana by more than 15 points. Notch one up for Jim. I'm 2-2 in the season on bold predictions. And Brad last week said Juwan Coleman, would have a double-double against Indiana. He fell a little short. Two rebounds and 4 points. Brad drops to 1-3, I believe, in bold predictions.
Yeah, I stink at my bold predictions. Coleman didn't get enough playing time.
Yeah, it's nothing to be ashamed of. When you make
they're bold predictions.
They're bold predictions.
It's bold. It's bold for a reason.
Now, Verk didn't have a prediction last week, so he's at 1-2. Let's hear your bold predictions for this week's, fellas.
See, I like picking. My bold prediction is Syracuse is undefeated when Duke comes to the Dome.
All right, that's an extended one. That's fine. That's fine. That is pretty bold because that's a lot of games to win.
It's February.
Yeah. And we haven't been undefeated through January ever. I mean,
no?
Not in this whole stretch. I mean, remember I can't remember the exact teams that we lost to, but there's always a game in mid or early January that we should win that we kind of lay an egg in. It was Seton Hall a few years ago. So, yeah, that's a bold prediction. We'll keep track of that one.
They've got North Carolina before Duke. That'll probably be the biggest test. And Pitt.
The same team that lost to Belmont and UAB?
That's the one.
Okay. They did look like a different team against Michigan State, but
that's without Hairston too.
Yeah. They're a tough team to figure out.
Yeah,
you're right.
They're going to have a tough time securing a number 1 seed though with those 2 losses on their resume.
Yeah. I think that's out. I don't think they're that good. I don't think they're going to be competing for number 1 seed.
Okay. So, Brad, how about you? What is your bold prediction this week?
My bold prediction is not Syracuse related, but my bold prediction is that Baylor will beat Kentucky tomorrow night.
Nice. That's a bold prediction I like, and I'm sure the line on that's probably Kentucky 6, 7, 5, 6.
I don't even know. They're playing at a neutral court. They're playing at the Cowboy Stadium. Sort of a dry run for the Final Four, I guess, because that's down there this year. And it's in Texas, and hopefully that gives Baylor a decent home crowd.
I'll be interested to see how many people go to that.
It'll be great. Great atmosphere.
Yeah, because it seats, 100,000?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the Final Four is going to set a record this year for most people at the Final Four.
Sure.
You know? I think for basketball, you're talking 80,000, you know.
Yeah, they had the NBA All-Star game there.
Yep.
All right, I'm doing a callback for my bold prediction. One of my losses, incorrect picks from a few weeks ago, I'm going to call it back. I think it's going to happen this week. Matter of fact, Saturday night, B.J. Johnson's going to break out and score 15 against Binghamton. Some of these freshmen, we talked about it, we're going to see him again. They're going to get some run. I think B.J. Johnson is raring to go, and he's going to light it up against the Bearcats from Binghamton. So we'll have the results of that next week, and Verk's Duke undefeated going into Duke prediction is going to have to wait. All right, guys, coming up on 10:56 Eastern Time here in the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls. Time for Two for the Road. We haven't really talked about the ACC Big Ten Challenge as a whole. It ended up being 6-6. Last Thursday night, Brad and I thought that the Big Ten was going to easily win. But the ACC held their own. Any impressions, you guys, on this week's challenge? Any of the games stick out to you?
You know, to me, I still don't have that ACC pride going. So, you know,
I rooted against Duke. I rooted against them all.
So, you know, typically when the Big East is in the challenge, I'm rooting for every Big East team. And I was rooting for the ACC in this, but, you know, I didn't really pay too close attention to it. But, you know, North Carolina's win over Michigan State stood out. You know, Virginia losing to Wisconsin at home by, you know, double digits kind of stood out to me, and only scoring 38 points.
Yeah.
You know, Virginia was a team that was ranked early, and now I think they got 3 losses. You know, Ohio State continues to roll along, and they're 8-0, and who'd they play? They killed
Maryland.
Yeah, Maryland's terrible.
Preview of the Big Ten.
Yeah, they'll be in the Big Ten next year. But you know, overall, it was good. You know, ACC held its own, like you said, and you know, ACC is actually, you know, we've talked about it's pretty weak this year, really. You know, we got Duke, North Carolina, and Syracuse.
I was good to see Pitt win. Notre Dame lost to Iowa, though, right?
Yep.
And that was just, I wanted to see the Big East teams represented. I was really glad, obviously, that Syracuse, you know, represented in their first opportunity. You know, with a big win. How about you, Brad? What stood out to you this past week?
It was disappointing to me that they didn't create better matchups, and I know they had to do this pretty far in advance, but it would have been great to see Syracuse play Ohio State rather than Indiana.
I like it's happy with it, but yeah.
Or Syracuse, Michigan State. I mean, I guess they give Duke and Carolina the marquee games, and you sort of have to accept that, and that's part of what we signed up for, I suppose. But Ohio State was one that would have created a nicer matchup. I think even somebody like Iowa, I think, would have given Syracuse a tougher game. Indiana, they were good last year, but they're down so much. I don't think that was probably the best matchup we could have seen. So that was unfortunate. You know, a lot of what Verk said. Wisconsin was probably the team that impressed me the most going on the road. You know, Virginia's supposed to be a good team. I haven't seen it. Like Burke said, I haven't seen it, but they've been as impressive as anybody this season, and going in there and holding that team to under 40 points, which is what Wisconsin does. That's a team to be reckoned with. So they probably impressed me as much as anybody in this series.
How about the fact that we had a mutual opponent here? Florida State lost to Minnesota. Now, you know, we handled Minnesota. That bodes well for us, doesn't it?
If you assume that Florida State's any good, I guess.
Well, who is good in this ACC, you know? I mean,
Syracuse and Duke.
And Duke's got 2 losses. North Carolina's got 2 losses. Virginia's got 3 losses.
Pitt's undefeated.
Pitt's undefeated, but they've really played nobody.
It's a down conference. This conference will get 4 teams in the dance, maybe.
Wow.
And
think of that.
It's sad.
Yeah, it used to. That would normally be a fact that would make me happy. Now think if Syracuse and Pitt and Notre Dame weren't in this conference again this year, what it would look like.
They'd get 2 teams, maybe 3 if they were lucky with Virginia.
Well,
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
well, one last topic here before we call it a wrap on this week's episode. Verk, you were in the Dome for that Indiana game. I was watching it on TV. Obviously, Brad was too. It was great to see that big-time atmosphere in the Dome. It's been since last, early March that we've seen the Dome like that, and I loved every minute of it. Was it really that? How did it feel?
It had a good feel. It wasn't like Georgetown last year to me, but it had a nice feel. A big-time program like Indiana coming in. Obviously, 28,000 there, I think, or something. I forget what they announced.
26 something, 28.
I think.
Yeah.
So, it was great, and the crowd was good. It wasn't like it was like we methodically just took them apart, so there wasn't like huge runs. You know what I mean? It wasn't like crazy in there, but
We did get loud in the beginning of the second half.
When they cut it down a little bit, and they were standing up a few times for defense, and it was a nice crowd, good atmosphere.
There's a lot of funny, weird things that happened during that game. One of them was, did you see the girl from Indiana who took off all her clothes?
No.
Yeah.
She was in,
that?
I think it was
I saw that
section
picture.
313, and apparently this girl who was wearing Indiana clothes got so disgusted that she took off her clothes and sat there in her underwear. And then when the game was over, she put her pants back on and walked. Somebody took a picture of it. It's that you can get to it from News Magician or Syracuse.com, the Post Standard site, which really is kind of weird. And a lot of signs, a lot of big heads. Tirico in the house. Mark Texier in the house with some other bodyguard type guy with his shirt unbuttoned. You see that guy, Brad?
I did. Yeah.
Guy sitting next to Texier. So, like I said, the whole thing was like an infomercial for Syracuse. There was nothing pro Indiana. It just looked like a big orange party, and stuff like that obviously only helps in recruiting and I guess merchandising. So, any thoughts on the atmosphere in the Dome, Brad?
Well, it was funny because I looked at the attendance and it was 27,000, but and Verk, correct me if I'm wrong because you obviously saw it better than I did, but it looked in the upper level like there were it was sparse in spots. It wasn't as complete a crowd, I think, as I would remember a high 20s type crowd, where you just see a sea of people. It felt like some of the spots in the upper deck weren't as full.
Yeah, it did appear like that. I know up to the left of the student section was pretty bare, especially up towards the third level there. But I don't know if they are just counting.
They count members of the media.
All the season tickets sold, and those people might not have been there.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But it was a great crowd. Non-conference game. Obviously, we've had bigger non-conference crowds going back to But it's great, and it's only going to get better. If they keep winning, people are going to continue to come out and support them. So it's definitely a big-time atmosphere. And I tell you, Jerry Cooney is a crowd favorite now.
Trevor Cooney, yeah.
Everybody loves him.
Has he won you over, though?
Yes, and I'll be the first to say it. I mean, he's playing great. He's shooting the ball, at a 48% clip from the 3-point line. He's
Not an air ball from the corner.
He did shoot an air ball, so that it just makes just it's been a while since he's done that though. So he's played great, and I'm not coming in the season wasn't a big fan, and I thought he struggled early. He's definitely gotten obviously a lot better, but he's not going to continue to shoot 48%. I don't think for the year.
Yeah,
but he has done well.
Weird show tonight. I don't think we really even talked about Tyler Ennis, who is a big story, but we did cover a lot of topics, and it's...
So, guys, one topic we didn't talk about.
Yeah?
Richmond played William & Mary this week.
Yeah, beat him kind of easy. Now the Triverk does...
Well, we were up in that game with we went on a 25-2 run or something, take the lead with about 7 minutes ago.
6 minutes to go, yeah.
It was I did some in-depth reading on that game, and we blew it.
Did you watch it on ESPN3, Brad?
I did not. I couldn't get it.
We get our point guard back, though, Brad. We're still playing without our 3-year, which will be a 4-year starting point guard who's been sitting out. So he'll be back in a week.
So look for the Tribe and possibly the Spiders in next week's power rankings. All right, guys. I had a good time tonight. Obviously, coming off a win. Next week, we'll be talking about the Binghamton victory, hopefully, and thank you all for joining us for the Upstate Orange podcast. You can subscribe to our feed on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or via RSS. We're online at podcasts.fingerlakes1.tv/upstate hoops. And we'll be back next Thursday night at 10 p.m. So, for my co-hosts, Brad Connor, Matt Verkey, and our producer, Jeremy Hunt, I'm Jim Sinacropi. Have a great week, and let's go Orange.